Welcome to the Eastside Arts Festival and the first screening of Little Stranger, the experience of a refugee child. Now, following the film, we'll have a discussion with a panel of special guests here in the studio, and you will be able to join that discussion as well as you wish. But first, Little Stranger.
cannot know you. Instead, I call on you, land. Give me a place to put my feet, a home from my uncertainty, a place to doubt, a place to live. Sky, you are too big.
Persian blue. I cannot know you.
Instead, I call on you, land.
Give me a place to put my feet, a home for my uncertainty,
A place to doubt, a place to live.
What a beautiful film, and congratulations to the producing partnership of Powerstone, Tinderbox and DU Dance in the making of Little Stranger. Welcome back to this East Side Arts Festival event and the screening of Little Stranger. I'm Portrayed Coyle, and for about the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to be discussing some of the themes raised in that film with the panel who've joined us today. I'm joined by Cecilia Milburn, Assistant Director of Children's Services in Barnardo's in Northern Ireland, Lena Jemeni, Community Development Officer of the Dungannon-based organisation STEP. It works with Eastern European and other incoming communities. Eileen Chan-Hu is the founder and Chief Executive of Crack NI, an organisation that utilises education and training as a way of increasing understanding and tolerance between the different cultures. Maciej Bator is a Polish national who has made Northern Ireland his home for 17 years, am I right?
18 years.
18 years
yeah,
now.
Making.
And he's worked in the area of community work. Seamus Corrigan describes himself as a friend of the Cullen Neighbourhood Partnership in Belfast, working in the area of developing social enterprise programmes which will create employment. And for those of you watching online, if there are any points or questions you'd like to make, you've the opportunity on the screen, and I will put those to our panel. Now, the UNHCR, the United Nations Refugee Agency, reports that there are over 82.4 million displaced people around the world. A huge number of them are unaccompanied minors. Little Stranger represents one of them, represents an anonymous refugee. Cecilia, could I get your reaction, first of all, to Little Stranger, and perhaps how that dovetails into the work that you do with Barnardo's?
So, Porrick, I would be involved with 3 very separate kinds of services where we welcome, if you like, newcomer young people, refugee and asylum seeking young people to Northern Ireland. So some come with their families, and people are maybe familiar with the Syrian settlement scheme where children came with their families, and we provide support into those families. But we also provide what are called independent guardians for unaccompanied and separated children and young people who find themselves in Northern Ireland without a parent or a guardian with them. And under Northern Irish legislation, they're entitled to have an independent guardian to support them. And I suppose when I watched the film, I was struck by a few things. One, just how fragile Little Stranger is, as the little paper doll who is passed around and who goes on this journey. I suppose I was struck that at the beginning the girls were doing very traditional kind of hopscotch and play and having fun, and then there's this sense of foreboding, and that Little Stranger has to move, and that sense of just and all the different types of ways that our young girl makes her way through. So whether that's on a train, whether that's walking, whether that's by boat. And I suppose that reflects the stories of the young people that we meet in our service, who don't often know that they're actually in Northern Ireland when we first meet them. They don't know where they have come to. They hear maybe an English English language being spoken and assume that they're in London, because that might be the only place that they've heard of where, that's somewhere in the UK. So a lot of, I suppose, confusion, a lot of fear, a lot of the journeys that the children make and the young people make are absolutely unbelievably difficult. And they have met some very, very dangerous people, usually along the way. So whether that has been a person who has smuggled them, whether that has been a person who has trafficked them. And I was really struck. There was a little part of the film where Little Stranger was literally hidden behind somebody's back and then passed on to the next person. And that sense of young people may have been on the road for weeks, months, and often years before we get to meet them in Northern Ireland. So very powerful, I think. Representative of young people from many different countries, many different parts of our world, but places where life is difficult, dangerous, where there is war and where there's desperate poverty, and so people have to flee. Nobody leaves home willingly. I don't think in that scenario those children and young people haven't left home because they want to, but because they feel they have to. And so, it's about us extending a place of safety.
Well, I mean, I suppose, those real life experiences, none of us, or very few of us, can imagine what they have gone through. Yeah. But what is Barnardo's role in helping?
So for that young person, we need to meet that young person within 24 hours of them coming to attention, usually of authorities in Northern Ireland, and we will be with them right through their journey to through the asylum process, to get into a stage where they have the right to remain here in Northern Ireland, being with them in all of those very difficult interviews and processes. Making sure that that their welfare is paramount, making sure that they are well cared for. Initially, just making sure that they've had something to eat, that they've had something to drink, that they have been able to get some sleep, and that they're clothed appropriately, and then taking them right the way through, and hopefully getting to the stage where a young person is able to live independently.
They must be frightened to death.
Absolutely terrified. And I think as well, if you understand some of the countries where young people have come from, a deep distrust and a fear of authority, you know, and so therefore it takes time to build a level of trust, even with an independent guardian, to understand that this person is for them, is working for their best interests, and will represent them, will communicate what they want and see what they want to happen. And that's maybe the first time in a very long time that an adult has been able to do that for them, you know, to look after them. Who, you know, their interest isn't in getting money to move them. Their interest isn't getting money from them. The interest is in you as a young person, you know. And
interested in your well-being.
Absolutely, and that is paramount, you know. And I'm really proud that actually, so the independent guardians, that's unique legislation to Northern Ireland. It's not in any other part of the UK. And I'm really proud that actually our Northern Irish Assembly, you know, passed that legislation. And so we're saying, you know, actually we see these young people as ours. Very quickly, they become ours, and we're here to look after them in exactly the same way as any other child or young person.
Well, let me switch to Lena. Let me ask you about, you're living in Dungannon now for how many years, and what is the work of the organisation that you were with, STEP? What does it do?
I am living in Dungannon 17 years, and more than 10 years working at STEP organization. STEP has lots of projects, and one of the projects we am working is Saturday Language Club. We have more than 160 children from 3 language groups, Lithuanian, Polish, and Russian. And before COVID pandemic, we worked every Saturday, 3 hours, and taught children own languages. Also, children has an opportunity to celebrate traditional events, ethnic events, also invite families. We work with children who in risk to lost own language. The language club was established in 2006 and starts from very little 12 children Lithuanian group. And we, on 2008, was created new project, and we got money, small money, but good money for language club. And we start work with different language groups.
So it's important for them, they would have been born here, they might never have visited the place where their parents or grandparents have come from, and so it's important that you retain a link with the mother country.
Yes, now grow up new generation who born here, they definitely not knows language very well and traditions, parents working, busy to celebrate with children. But when we start work, children was newcomers, and they all was Lithuanian, Polish speakers, and Russian speakers, and Portuguese speakers, and they feel strangers in this country, as film shows. And the language club was like place where they found some new friends, and they could speak own language, and I feel a bit like an own home. They feel more comfortable, because it was. From my personal experience, I know that it was quite difficult to came from own country to different country. We didn't know people. Most of them not speaks English. And I remember when my daughter's children came here, 2 weeks she not go out from house, not go on street, no went on street. She was afraid. I said, Mom, I am afraid to go. Not afraid to people or some, but no language, different place. And people and children, definitely children, feel, frightening.
How did she then begin to lose that fear?
Time works. Time works, and started to look for job, found a job, found new friends, and because my big family is here, and we could communicate and visited each other, and just need a time. We bit need a time. Always first time is very difficult. Was difficult for me when I left Lithuania. But after some time, we assimilate. We found good, very good people. In my experience in Northern Ireland, I met only good people. And I'm so happy to be friends with him.
Was there any particular image in the film, The Little Stranger, that struck a chord with you? I was thinking about the suitcase.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
there something about it?
Oh, yeah. More than 3 years ago, we did project in Language Club. We created a small booklet about Lithuania, and it's called booklet called Lithuania in My Heart. And children put in drawings about feelings, about own country who they left, and they put quotes. And I all the time remember when I watch a film and saw this suitcase, I remember one girl put a quote on this booklet. What she wrote, I package my suitcase, but it is so small to pack in my grandma's garden, my Lithuanian green forests, my seaside with white sand and small pieces of amber in the sun. Yeah. It's just, tears becomes.
Of course.
Yeah, it reflects not only these girls, but all children feelings. Of course, each history is different, each child's feelings is different, but I met a lot of children who was newcomers like myself. 17 years ago, I was newcomer, and they really understand what their feelings are. Now the adults, now they send own children to Language Club, and we're happy to accept them after pandemic.
Eileen, let me turn to you and just let's find out a little bit about the work of Crack NI and how it interweaves with the communities, helping different communities to integrate.
We set up an inclusion and diversity social enterprise in 2015. Majik is also one of the co-founders. There was a group of us, Majik, Mark Donoghue, Mohammed, and myself. We sat in a room and we were mind mapping, what our title was, what we were aiming to do. So we came up with CRACK, which stands for Cultivate, Respect, Appreciate Inclusion Across Communities. The last couple of years we've changed the communities to cultures because we felt that's what we're doing. We're trying to make sure we appreciate the other cultures that are here. And we
what was
also
the thing that had prompted it in the first place? Diverse
people promoting diversity, diverse trainers promoting diversity training. We felt that, we were the people that came from a very diverse background and we wanted to give something back in that way. And we all had sort of experiences working in the sector. I was previously the CEO of Chinese Welfare Association and I was born here, brought up here, second generation Chinese. And, our trainers today come from 17 different nationalities. We have our team based in Delhi, Denmark, Hong Kong, France. We've worked across Europe the last couple of years in Italy, Turkey, Greece, and Scotland on Erasmus project, which has looked at cultural awareness training for trainers. So for us at Crack and I, we're very much into the strength of people understanding cultural awareness and how that can support them to have better relations with each other and to have that understanding that we can bond together and form those connections. So cultural awareness is really, really important. We feel that's the way, because what prompted it, 2014, there were over 921 racist incidents, a fairly bad year. If people remember back then, the year, Anna Lowe was in the news, the peace rally was on, which over 10,000 people attended, the year of the Jaro Talia, and that year, was when people were very reactionary to racist incidents, and we felt in training we could do a preventative way. If people could be trained and understand each other, that might prevent what was happening.
And has the situation improved?
Racist incidents? No. People's relations, I think we talk a lot more about it, and talking is really important, and that opportunity to speak out. We have seen the last year, post BLM and the Black Lives Matter, the support to people and improvement in industry. We work with the private sector too. We see people looking for more diverse people on their boards, better representation, or trying to for underrepresented groups. However, in Little Stranger we see that isolation and that lack of connection, and that's where we hope our training can look at, where no one can feel that they don't belong, or they don't feel like they can understand each other. Lena, I think you talked about fear. Fear is one way of, when you start to hate people is because you're scared of them, you don't like them. And we look at that in training, but I think for me, if you're talking about going to Little Stranger, it's funny that you mentioned it was a girl. It could be a girl, a boy, that paper cutting. If I put myself in that position, I was that little girl growing up. I was the only child in my primary school that was Chinese, the first ethnic minority child in Carrickfergus. And you laugh at it, because the CEO thinks I'm definitely a Carrickfergus girl. I love Carrickfergus. Castle's beautiful, town is gorgeous, and it was brilliant in the 70s. But I always say I'm made in Belfast, because Belfast was my first place I was born, and I. To find that root and not to be a stranger is important. I have felt that through my journey in life. And I laugh at Cecilia when she says, coming back, she came back from Scotland, from university, and she calls this home. I had a light bulb moment when I was in Hong Kong when my father was very ill. And I was traveling on the train every day in the underground, and that takes you back to the train scene in The Little Stranger. And I thought to myself, should I stay in Hong Kong or not? That was a couple of years ago, 2014, a difficult year. But I was drawn back to Belfast because it was the place I was born, brought up, went and educated, all my friends, my family. The work that I do in race equality, cultural awareness, all my life was all connected, and I don't have those connections as much in Hong Kong, although my parents are there. So a bit like the train and the journey and the roots, where the tracks here. So.
Maciej, can I turn to you? I mean, your home is Poland, but you've been here 17 years, nearly 18 years. That suggests that you've no plans to leave anytime soon.
Well, I think home is here.
How did you come here, and what's it been like for you?
I came here in 2004 by accident. I meant to stay in Northern Ireland for 3 months. Before I came to Northern Ireland, I knew some stories, things, mainly presented by the media in Poland. So I was actually prejudiced myself. I thought that every single person in Northern Ireland is involved in terrorism, that Belfast is being put on fire every single night, and life here will be very dangerous. On top of everything, my grandmother said to me, "Don't go, they're going to kill you," when she discovered I'm going to be living in Belfast. So as you can imagine, I wasn't actually expecting that I'm going to be sitting in the chair and talking about my experiences in the future, after 18 years of living here. Belfast, or actually I came to live in Moira, first of all, which is not far away from Belfast, which was a small town. I was one of the first people who came to Northern Ireland, and I was actually a novelty. People were asking me different questions, sometimes very silly questions about Poland, sometimes very important or difficult questions. And I find out at the beginning that people really want to know more about myself, but when we had an influence of Polish people coming to Northern Ireland, when we became very visible, I think the approach started to change. The approach shifted from being curious to being actually uncomfortable with so many people from Poland coming to settle in Northern Ireland. On top of everything, in many areas of Northern Ireland or in Belfast, some communities realized that Poles are coming from Catholic background, and for some, we became Republicans overnight, especially in the Protestant part of Northern Ireland. People thought that because we are coming from a Catholic background, we came here to support one side of the conflict, which was obviously misleading. That's what started actually, I think this increased the level of hate crime against Polish community in Northern Ireland. In terms of my experiences, similarly to you, I was dealing with very hard cases. I was actually supporting Polish people, victims of hate crime. I've seen a lot, but I was never actually a victim. I was never a person who could say that something bad happened to me. Maybe this is my luck, maybe this is my approach, but I was very lucky. I'm very lucky until today. I spent half of my life in Northern Ireland, so life is here. Poland is my second home, always be. You know, everything you said.
Yeah.
The suitcase would be, the suitcase was too small to take everything with me, but I equally find those places in Northern Ireland. I had to create them. I had to create sense of belonging. When I came here, for the first few years, I thought Northern Ireland is temporary. I'm here for maybe, I will stay another month, another year. When I reached the stage when I said to myself, okay, this is a full-time project, I started actually focusing on building my relationship, not only with local people that can actually survive a bit longer, but also with this land.
Well, you're doing work to kind of show people here that the associations between Northern Ireland and Poland actually go back quite a long way. I mean, thinking of a project you were involved in relating to World War II and World War II pilots, Polish airmen.
Correct. So first of all, I think I have to tell this, being honest, I was a bit selfish in my approach to running a project or actually trying to build projects. For many years, I was actually, people were reminding me that I'm not local, I don't belong, by asking me where I'm from. And don't make me wrong, I don't see anything bad in asking person where, or people where they're from. But if you hear that on daily basis, 2, 3, 5, 7 times, it's a constant reminder that you're actually a migrant, you're a blow-in, you're a foreigner, you would never become part of this community, this society, or this land. So I started actually telling them where I'm actually from. You know, when you approach me on the street, I have a very small gap of opportunity. I can say I'm from Poland, and that's it, right? But, by running projects, I can explain not only where I'm from, but I can also explain where Polish people are from, what's the connection, and be actually more meaningful about the whole experience. In 2012, there was a Polish flags being burned on bonfires across Belfast. And I think that's where we actually started thinking how we can approach building relationships. Yes, you can criticize people, you can actually condemn that, but that won't change anything. That would actually create more anger. You have to go and start talking to people, make them aware, educate them, and create an experience that they can remember. So we started For Your Freedom and Ours, based on the idea that Polish pilots were based in Northern Ireland in the Second World War. So there was something in common. There was a story to tell, and the only thing I learned about Northern Ireland is if you can't tell the story, people won't listen to it. If the story is not enjoyable, not approachable, and if you can't actually, enjoy people, make people to enjoy the banter, you're not successful. So we try to tell the story in a very interactive way, where people can not only spend time taking part in workshops, but they can actually have study visits, for example, local visits or maybe visits to Poland. As well as meeting interesting people that can actually echo that what we said or what they heard from someone who is Polish, it's actually true.
Seamus, I want to hear your story, the story of the Collin Neighbourhood Partnership and what its role is in the life of people. But first, are there any elements of the Little Stranger film that resonated with you?
Yeah, the very start of The Little Stranger brought me straight back to my childhood. I'm originally from Tyrone, a little village called Pomeroi, and we had a train station there, and that train station was the focus of a lot of activity, a lot of positivity, people coming and going and having places to go to and having a place to come home from. goods were delivered and so forth, and I got this immediate sense of warmth, and back home when I was almost looking around for my dad. And then the film moved on, and it portrays to me in a very soft, kind way an horrific story that a lot of people must go through. And so as the film rolled out, the little flecks of the wood chips on the railway started to flitter about, and I suddenly got into the mindset of somebody, a refugee, or someone on the road trying to get away or get to somewhere, be it safety or whatever it was. And then the kids' feet, you know, there was a left foot, and then a right foot, and then a left foot, and then a right foot. And the way my mind, which is a strange place at times, started to think. I started to think about the children, the child soldiers that you saw in the various wars, you know, and those kids carrying heavy guns and making their way and dodging and looking out of the side of the track and looking behind them and so forth. Back then, the railway was a secure place. It was also a dangerous place because strange people travelled up and down those pathways to get along. Again, Dungannon comes back. It's very close to my heart now. I know the scene where the graffiti and the mesh. I know that particular street. I used to work not too far from that now, and I started to think about some of these people, some of the kids, maybe not kids. You know, what did they go through? What sort of people did they encounter? Were they penned up? So many different emotions. But then, as you go on through, and the little doll appeared and went through all the hands, the lasting piece was the strut of the girls at the very end. The confident strut of confident young ladies walking towards the camera. I thought it was a magnificent piece of work to describe what must be an horrific journey for I don't know, thousands. The suitcase symbolised something different for me. It was the thousands of people that must be travelling that journey, unstructured journey.
No idea where they'll be tomorrow, where they'll be tonight, where their next meal will come from.
That's right. And then I try to filter that back into what we're trying to do in terms of involving people who have had a structure, people who have had parents, have had an education, an educational structure, have had a health structure, a welfare structure, and so forth. And here we're trying to tease them out, to get involved, to create positive, healthy communities. And you start to say, well, you know, what's it all about? Do people not realise how good a life they have without having to be teased out? You know, isolation is the other issue. You know, how isolated must those travellers have felt during the course of that journey at such a tender age, with no experience or reserve to fall back on. We deal with isolation primarily with the elderly, and we do it through outward bound phone calls, all done by volunteers. We try to help. If we can help them, we help them. We put them we signpost them in the right direction and so forth, which is a great service, but there's only so many that you can deal with, you know. But if you look at the various sections of society and expand that into the bigger world, So the bigger world being the kids that are, and the people that are displaced and so forth. You know, I think I said to you, you know, man's inhumanity to mankind. You know, you really need to stop. Everybody needs to stop and think, what can I do to try to make a difference?
Does it work out for every group that, you know, the Colin neighbourhood is helping?
No, it doesn't. Those people that want to get involved get great benefits from it now. I'm glad that all your experiences have been positive now. But it doesn't always work out. And the structure, the benefit structure in Northern Ireland can be a big inhibitor, whereas it's great, provides security. I can understand how people can grab that and hold on to it and not want to get away from it. But in terms of integration, I again, sort of coming from my social enterprise background, business background, you know, I think one of the biggest integrators into communities, into society, is through the workplace, and through training and getting involved and contributing. And that I think in some ways conflicts with the benefit system. So I'm dealing, or have dealt with, people who have come through a structured process to get into the country, who are supported by the housing executive, who are superb, absolutely superb organisation, and the various departments of social welfare and so forth. You know, but there's a link missing. I'm not too sure how to break that link. Building communities is not an easy job. Integrating into communities is not an easy job.
Well, let me ask about, in particular, say, men, how they are affected by a change in circumstances. Say the man is the head of the household. Maybe he comes in advance of his family. They come here, but the situation has changed. You know that. Their esteem, their self-worth takes a knock. Maybe in their own country they were a mechanic or a carpenter, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever. Here, it's zero.
Absolutely. So one of the projects that my team are involved in is about family reunification, and often it is dad who comes first, and he may have been here for a number of years and then has to prove that he is able to sustain having his family here, so you know, and he has to justify that he has the income to reunite his family, but that can mean families living in really small, you know, poor housing, in inappropriate housing. Big issue with people being able to transfer what are really high quality qualifications and professions, and being able to transfer those skills into a Northern Irish setting. And so having to take maybe not just one step back, but going back to the beginning of a career, you know, and what that does to people's self-esteem. What I hear consistently, and we asked young people last year, we did a report called A New Life for Me, and we asked young people what helps, what actually makes life better. And it is if a parent is in work. And so, you know, so I'm right with Seamus, you know, we need to be trying to help, and people want to work. And people are hugely grateful for having a safe place to live, and they want to give back, and they want to be part of society. So with a little bit of help, and it's trying to work out what's the right bit of help, and put that last piece of the jigsaw together to get people into work. For children and young people, but also for parents, what they want is education, because education is the thing that's going to help them achieve, and it's going to help them achieve their dreams. And so they want to be able to go into school and feel safe in school and feel welcome in school, to get the support they need to acquire English as quickly as possible, and they want to feel part of a community. So one of the things we've been doing recently is for families who've been through that very structured system. How do we keep you on that journey of integrating and being part of? And so we've been recruiting some integration volunteers, and that's, you know, if anybody's watching and wants to become an integration volunteer, you can find my details, and we'll put you in touch. And those are people who are spread out across Northern Ireland, and they will basically become a friend, a support to a family.
Because really, I suppose some of those volunteers, maybe they can help in, removing misconceptions. Because I often wonder about people who are maybe housed in areas of the city where there are existing tensions.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about flags or marches or traditions,
Yeah.
and in many ways they're exposed to
Absolutely.
what's going to happen.
So we need to work really hard to keep our new arrivals safe, and we need to give them enough information so they understand just how Northern Ireland works, and that's tricky because we don't all agree on how
Yes,
Northern
of
Ireland
course.
works. So we have to do that bit, and we have to keep people safe. Even really simple stuff, just about what's legal here, what can you do, what you can't do. You need to know that. So we do that early on. But an integration volunteer, and we now have Syrian families right across Northern Ireland because that programme has been running for 6 years now. So we have families from the very northwest to the very southwest, from the very north coast right down to Newry and the border, and so there's plenty of opportunities, and each one of those communities is different. We know that the experience of somebody in Dungannon is very different from Belfast, is different from somebody in Ballycastle. So how can a local volunteer can come along and say, well, this is our local fair, this is our local tradition, this is what we do, this is how those folk don't get on with those ones, but never worry about that, you'll be fine. But they can give that context. Main thing though is somewhere safe to practice English, because people want English, and because that is if you can speak and if you can communicate, even if it's very simply, that allows you to build relationship, and what people want is relationship, connection, community, and they want to then be able to give back.
So Eileen, does that kind of breaking down the language barrier, does that help remove misconceptions and change attitudes, do you think?
Yes, I started life in community sector, teaching English. I was actually, because my English was good, being born here, brought up here, I was identified by one of the members of the community, no longer here, Fee Ching Cameron, of the Multicultural Resource Centre. She asked me to go and tutor some other Chinese children at the time. I just passed my driving test. It was great. I can say I earned good money way back in the late 80s on £20 an hour, which is fantastic. But I took it seriously, and I did the Trinity College teaching English as a foreign language course. That enabled me to do 7 years in teaching English and running after schools clubs, being an education liaison officer as one of my first sort of career jobs. And as we were talking, I was just listening to Cecilia there. At CRAC, we developed supporting children with English as additional language for all the childcare practitioners in Northern Ireland. We work with the childcare partnership, and we've trained over 400 childcare workers in that. So I'm sort of happy in that approach. The other one we did was we worked with Footprints Women's Centre. We did that course on its head, where we supported the parents with English as additional language. So we taught them the English that would support them to be with their children at nursery school age, and the first steps of what they need for when they go to school. And one of the things that I noticed in that, there's a little form that you're probably aware of. You go to school and you have to write down your neighbour's name and your contact details. What struck us, because we were working with the Syrian parents at the stage, was they didn't have a contact. And it reminded me of when I was young, that things that my mum and dad did was made sure they met neighbours and people, because if anything ever happened to me, there was a contact. So we were training that. So in the next 3 or 4 years, you build up your contacts, because something happens to the child at school, they don't have anybody. So you bring it back to the little stranger thing. That's how strange it can be. You don't have somebody. And you talked about isolation, exactly. I connect with your men's club thing. I actually was a placement student in community development at the men's shed at Colin Glen, and the men were wonderful because they told me stories of how they were isolated, that maybe their spouses had passed away, or they were on their own, they couldn't cook, or whatever. They also laughed and said there's no way they could ever cook Chinese, but I encouraged them with their cabbages in the allotment. But I think more of that needs to be done, where opportunities for the other people can take part. So I was that little girl that grew up from Woodfield, Shankill Road, ending up Chinese in your allotments. But I'm just saying, if we have these children that are no longer to be strangers, could be working with people, it would make a big difference.
Is that advice you would offer, Lena, that for strangers not to remove being strangers, knock on your neighbour's door, get to know the people who live around you?
Oh yeah, I know that we are eldest generation like me. We always want to know neighbors, always want to communicate with neighbors. Youngest people, we bit wants to be isolated. But in my experience now, when we're working in language club and working with parents and giving them trainings about culture differences and giving an opportunity to represent own culture, for example, Russian, Polish, Lithuanian groups culture, parents coming, helping, meet each other. And these barriers is completely broken. Not fully, but starts to be broken. And we would like to see neighbors in one backyard. Maybe not now, but you know, but you know, it's situation. But definitely starts work. And see, my my children, they works in Dungannon, and they very nice communicate with neighbors, you know, and it's definitely breaks all communities' barriers, and it's definitely is very important process.
Yeah.
Magic, of the number of Polish nationals, has that declined alarmingly here, or what's the situation at the moment?
Well, I don't think I would have this data available. From what I can see, I think we have less and less Polish people living in Northern Ireland. It's down to the Brexit, down to COVID, also down to personal decisions. You know, majority of people came here for 3 to 6, maybe 2 years. Some of them stayed 10, 15 years, and I think, you know, there is a moment in life of a newcomer, I don't want to say a migrant, when you have to decide what to do with yourself. You either go back and spend the rest of your time with your family or maybe move elsewhere, or you agreed that this place, in this case Northern Ireland or North of Ireland, or no matter how you would like to say it, it's actually, it will become your home. It's also a decision where you're going to rest forever. You know, I think this is another thing that we don't discuss too often. All my family is based in Poland. My relatives or graves are in Poland. If I'm going to be staying here forever, who's gonna come and lay a candle or visit my grave? And this is actually in Polish tradition very, very important. Also, so yes, I think, like, you know, there is a decreasing level of Polish people in Northern Ireland, but we would still be the largest or one of the largest ethnic minority groups, and Polish language would be the second most common language in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, Jorge, lots of us are waiting to see the latest census data. So the census was taken back in May, and so that data will come out, and so we don't have good data of what Northern Ireland looks like at the minute, and I'm excited to see, because I think that Northern Ireland benefits. It's only good to have more diversity, and to share cultures and to share history and to share language and actually share our humanity in that sense, you know, and understand that what separates us is far less than what joins us. And so I'm excited to see what comes with our data, because that's going to give us an idea of what the next 10 years is going to look like. And as we have more and more second and third generations, and people who are, and fourth generations, and as we go on, you know, and also as we explore what the history of this place was, and actually understand that there has always been diversity here. There have always been newcomers, incomers, different people, and then join that up and make that feel more of a whole.
Well, long may it continue.
Indeed.
My thanks to you all for coming along, viewing the film The Little Stranger and taking part in this discussion. I wish you well. Thanks to Cecilia, Lena, Eileen, Magic and Seamus. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.